So welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for the NCRMA's live webinar. There will be many more to come. I'm Jennifer Zalkin. I am the director of the National Cannabis Risk Management Association. And for those of you who don't know, we are a nonprofit trade association that was established to give cannabis business owners, entrepreneurs, and dreamers the tools necessary to run sustainable and successful businesses. We exist to equip businesses along the vertical with tools, knowledge, and support necessary to build and grow profitable business models. Education is at the heart of our mission, and we're excited for the opportunity to highlight some of the risks you might not even know you're taking in a live yet virtual setting. I'm joined by our Chief Risk Management Officer, Alex Herding. Alex, why don't you start off by introducing yourself?
Hi, I am the Chief Risk Management Officer. My name is Alex Herding. I have had a very long passion for cannabis as a product and really for ending prohibition. That has been my main political agenda pretty much my entire adult life. I have a background in science and engineering, hydrologist, field engineer. I did a lot of occupational safety and health work. And as soon as the green rush opened up here in Colorado, I was a part of it as a caregiver, growing for patients. I received one of the first adult use or retail cultivation license in Colorado. I ended up designing, building, and operating multiple cultivation facilities, and I've been a consultant and operated in a lot of different areas, from application writing through business optimization. So have a very specific love for the industry and risk and controlling it in cannabis.
Awesome. So to enter a federally illegal industry, you have to have a high tolerance for risk, which means everybody working in the cannabis industry right now has an extraordinarily high risk tolerance. Would you say, Alex?
Absolutely, yeah. Anybody that decides to operate against federal rules is a risk taker, and we love risk takers. Everybody that was, basically buying or operating, while these states had prohibition, you were a risk taker, and to come from that arena to this legitimate industry, there's a lot of risk. Obviously, like you said, there's still federal prohibition, and these people that are coming in this industry, they're putting themselves on the line. These are people that have passion, have real goals, and see, this is one of their biggest shots at becoming successful. So we like to say cannabis is risky business, which it is, but it doesn't have to be as risky as some people make it out to be. And that's what, we want to provide here, is really the resources to control these risks.
Absolutely. And so through our experience supporting NCRMA members and in the nonprofit sector and conducting risk assessments and consulting through NCRPS, which is the National Cannabis Risk Prevention Services, that's our consulting arm. We've identified 5 major risks that operating businesses may not even realize that they're taking. Once again, I know I said this, but I want to make sure that everybody out there is utilizing the digital note-taking sheet. I've shared it in the chat. And for the sake of time, we're going to keep this conversation pretty high level. And we urge anybody to reach out to us to learn more. We'll also allow the last 10 to 15 minutes of this session for a Q&A. So please feel free to shoot your questions in the Q&A chat as they come, and we will get to them at the end of our discussion. But Alex, as the expert on all things cannabis risk, why don't you start with the risk that's on the top of your list?
Yeah, so the top risk really has to be criminal exposure. There's, because of the federal prohibition still being in place, marijuana is still a Schedule I drug. There's a chance for business operators to end up in an orange jumpsuit, end up in federal prison somewhere. There's a few specific ways that that this can happen, and really it largely revolves around money laundering. This industry, because it's cash, and because it's federally, illegal. There's a lot of ways that people can trip themselves up, either inadvertently raising red flags to the IRS or to a federal agency that they could be operating illegally. But really it comes down to money laundering, inversion, and diversion of product. Those are the main ways that that businesses could end up with criminal charges. Really the first thing that needs to be, that business operators need to be aware of, are their partners. Because people are coming in from that black market, there's still a tendency to operate in the shadows and to do things less than transparent. So the first thing is, if you're operating in this industry, you really need to trust your business partners, and you need to be confident that they are not operating in the black market. Some people call that the gray market, where they kind of have feet in both legitimate industry and in the black market. So that's the first thing, is just make sure you trust the people that you're with, that your business really is set up to be completely transparent and to be accountable. And that will really absolve you of a lot of this criminal exposure. The other thing businesses really need to be aware of is preventing inversion and diversion. So inversion is product from the black market coming into your facility. Diversion is the product that you have generated in the legitimate facility tracking system, and that it goes to the black market. There's things like looping that are done in the industry, where people buy the maximum amount and then go back to their car and keep coming by in that maximum amount. That can be seen as diversion. So businesses need to really control that, to have controls in place for that. And the money laundering side of it all, you could really inadvertently raise red flags to the IRS or your state or local revenue department. So you really need to be aware. Really, it comes down to paying your taxes on time, understanding when to file specific revenue reports. The cash part makes it even more complicated, that you have to have specific forms for specific types of transactions. So be really aware of your tax reporting. That's major.
So is that what you would say is the way to control, is to ensure that you are properly?
That would be a major control. Yes, absolutely. The major control there: one, trusting your partners that they're operating legitimately, and two, really making sure you're on top of your tax reporting. Those would be the two major controls.
I would also say, if you're unsure which the proper forms are to ensure that you are mitigating risks in this area, definitely give us a call. We can walk you through that. But moving on, so what would you say is the second risk on this list?
The second one, this would keep me up, and as an operator, this is the type of thing that would keep me and keep other operators up. It's really the lack of bankruptcy protection right now, which ultimately means that you don't have the same protection if your business fails like every other business, which means your debts could be absolved through Chapter 7 or Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So what's happened right now in the industry is that there has been a few businesses that are trying to get these bankruptcy protections, and it's seemingly they're just held up in federal court right now. It does not seem like the judges really want to advance these cases until federal legislation or some better guidance from the feds. So right now, this ultimately means that you could be personally held financially responsible for anything that goes wrong in your business, which this means this is everything, right? This is, any type of financial, hardship could land at the owner's feet. So how to control this really ultimately comes down to risk management, right? So this is, you really need to have a good risk management framework. You need to really control as much of these risks as possible. And that's obviously, an area where we can help. But the other thing that businesses really need to protect themselves from this is they call risk transfer, right? So the unlikely but high risk things that could happen, do you have good insurance? Risk transfer is ultimately revolve around good insurance. And so you need to really prepare for those potential situations where bad things happen, and you need to have good coverage that will really, really help you control this risk of having a lack of bankruptcy protection.
I will say for me, when I heard this one, it was a big shock. I know, I guess I just assumed that these businesses were eligible to file for bankruptcy, and it makes complete sense. Of course, being that they are federally illegal, that is not something that we're willing to offer. And so for sure, that was an aha moment for me. Because again, opening and running and driving any business involves a certain level, if not a large level, of personal finances being invested in, the success of your business. I will say also on the topic of insurance, as a part of the NCRMA's family of brands, we do endorse the first cannabis insurance captive in the nation, and we can help place proper insurance. So if you are interested in learning more about our insurance offerings and how to gain access to them, please visit our website, trichomerisk.com, or reach out to us directly. But moving right along, let's go to the number 3 risk on your list, Alex.
Yeah, the third risk here really is product safety. There's a lot that can happen here. And there's a lot of things outside, the control of the operator that can happen. I mean, I think one of the big examples right now is in Michigan. There was a massive recall. And then now it's getting tied up in courts. But I think it was a significant percentage of the flour in Michigan was recalled because the testing facility didn't have their act together, and apparently the results weren't accurate. So things like this can happen all the time, but product contamination is a real thing. And be frank with you, the industry really isn't fully aware of all of the product contaminants risks. The testing facilities, the way these rules were set up for contaminant testing really revolved around or they basically took the food testing requirements, E. coli and salmonella, which are important. They're more important on edibles. They're less frequent on actual flower and plant biomass. So there's a lot of mycotoxins out there that we really don't fully understand which ones are common on the plant and which ones actually can harm humans. We do know there's a couple out there. Aspergillus is the big one that people are aware of as a dangerous mycotoxin. But there's other ones that are less common and less known, like Fusarium. These are dangerous species that can really hurt people, especially with immunocompromised systems. And these fungi, they're everywhere in the growing process. And so if you're not aware of them, you don't test for them, you really can put yourself and your customers at risk. And having a product harm a client or a patient can be devastating. Not only to, financially for their medical expenses, but to your brand and to your business as a whole. So, really producing safe product is really important. And you can control this risk largely through your quality management program, right? I mean, there's a lot here. There's hygiene, good cleanliness really is one of the most important things. And, you have good manufacturing practices, best practices. And there's things you can do internally as well. I mean, just relying on one testing facility, one test is never a good idea. That's a single point failure. I really encourage businesses to have internal testing to really know what's in the product even before it goes to the testing facility, because that will really help understand what you're producing and what potential dangers your facility has and how you can control it. The good news is, if you do all these extensive research and testing into your product and facility, you can control these contaminants a lot easier if you don't than if you don't. So there's ways to control this. This is one of the most controllable things, but there's also things that happen outside your control. So, but it's always good to know what you're producing in your facility.
Yeah, and I would say, especially in the wake of all that we're learning and continuing to learn in the situation that's unfolding in Michigan, I think the key learning there is that you mentioned that single point testing failure, that when you're putting all of your eggs in one basket and you're trusting only one test and only one test facility, you're really putting all of your trust in that one test. And in science, they never go by one test.
Right.
There's always multiple tests, so that you can take the mean or the median between the three and get the best understanding and result of whatever you're testing. I think also for me, what makes with my aha moment of product safety is, of course, you don't want to harm your customers, your patients. You don't want to damage your brand reputation, because of course I'm sure if somebody has a bad experience, they will tell everybody that they know. But really the aha for me is the medical expenses as well, that you are responsible for as either the the cultivator that grew or produced that product, or that even sold it to them as well. So there are added costs that really build up.
That's a great point. And I think that's one of the things too, if I can get across a major point to the people here, is really your liability does not stop with that test, with the laboratory, the third party required testing. Every state has these testing requirements, and many businesses really operate under the assumption, well, if I pass the product test, then I'm safe. Then the product's out, and then I'm absolved of any liability, and that's couldn't be further from the truth. And I really want people aware that we're about to head into the next few years of legalization. There's going to be so much maturation and change, especially with the testing. But I will warn these businesses out here. There's going to be trial lawyers. They smell blood in the water. They're going to circle this industry. And when they start finding out the specific dangers, the specific contaminants out there, there's going to be secret shoppers. They're going to send, these trial lawyers are going to send people out, buy product, and they're going to do their own testing. Just like the facilities should have done in their lab or in their facility in the first place, these trial lawyers are going to take that. They're going to take it and they're going to say, look, I found some fusarium, some aspergillus in all of these products from all these facilities. And then they're going to create a huge class action lawsuit against businesses. This is coming. The other industries have been under this threat from, product liability for a long time. This industry has not seen it yet. The trial lawyers have not come in. Why? For the large reason is because banks aren't there. They don't have the deep pockets. They're just targeting these private equity investors. And so what they're waiting for, from my estimation, is once, federal legalization or decriminalization, descheduling, really ultimately allowing banks in, that's when the risk really heightens. And, this is the time to build these controls and processes in your facility before these class action lawsuits happen. So prepare.
I would also add that in general, for managing risk, it's really controlling. It's identifying these different areas within your business and the underlying areas, and then taking control of those. That's really what risk management is. And by instilling an internal testing, you have more control, you have more knowledge, you have more understanding over your product. So if you test it first before you even send it to the state, regulated or facilitated facility, you can bypass that. You can control a lot more than you may think.
Yeah, and then on that point too, another thing, I mean, about controlling risk is really important about documentation, right? And that's what these tests will also provide, because in the eyes of a law, if it's not on paper, it essentially didn't happen. Or if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And so it's really important to document what you're doing. With these tests, having additional tests, what that shows is that you were going above the rules and you had your own internal controls to prevent these hazards from happening. And so that's what's really important here, is that bad things will happen even when you try to prevent or mitigate, or they're going to happen. But if you have the processes and controls in place and you have documented them, you're not going to be in the same category as the business that doesn't have that documentation, which means you're going to have less exposure to these potential lawsuits.
It will also save you a lot more time, energy, and stress when and if there is an occurrence, if you have everything documented versus trying to figure out where it could be, what might be, who was working that day, who took in the order, anything of that sort. So it really just, again, the case of a negative situation, having your ducks in a row will at least help you move forward in the necessary ways more swiftly.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on to the next of our list, number 4 of the risks.
Yes. So yes. So number 4, this is one near and dear to me. This is worker safety. This is, this industry is actually, and for OSHA, is deemed actually general industry. OSHA has designations for different types of industries. More hazardous ones get their own special rules, like mining. But this industry falls in general industry, and it means it's about a moderate, even maybe less than moderate hazard, worker hazards. There's not extreme hazards in this industry like there are in others, but there are significant hazards that businesses really need to be aware of. In general industry, one of the most common injuries is just slips, trips, and falls. This is just a very common thing. People get hurt, and in worker injuries, these things can last forever, and so the exposure here is long-term medical expenses. I mean, not only can other pieces of equipment and facility can be injured, in an incident, but these medical expenses from the worker itself can just, these can be significant. The industry has common worker hazards, worker safety hazards, like I said, like slips, trips, and falls, working at heights, things like that. But they also have very unique things to the industry. There's some chemical and pesticide exposures that that you can find in other industries, but that can be specific to this industry. There's basic practices like washing hands and assuming pesticides in the cultivation area are on all these surfaces, and so to wash your hands before you eat, drink, or smoke. But one of the big unique hazards in this industry is repetitive motion injuries. You can get these from a lot of different tasks in this industry. Pruning and trimming are probably the most common ones, but even plant tagging, that motion where you're tagging each plant, I mean, in a huge facility, that can become a huge hazard for these workers, and the most unique one really is trimming. There's no motion like this in really any other industry. I guess hair cutting with the scissors could be similar, but there really hasn't been much studies. We did a really cool, unique study with Penn State last year and identified some hazards and some controls there. But these injuries they're gonna be huge in this industry. I don't think businesses are really aware on how significant and long-term these injuries are going to be, and how devastating it can be financially to them.
Not to cut you off, but I also think as the industry matures, there's going to be a lot of data over time that shows how it could be 2 years after somebody was working as a full-time trimmer that they now have nerve damage in their lower back or their shoulder, and they're they're losing function. And 2 years since they've worked in your facility, but they tie what caused that back to their time being employed by you. So you're right. These are things that are necessary to be aware of, because once an employee walks out of is no longer employed by you, that doesn't mean that you're still not at risk for something down the line. If you didn't have things, if you didn't have systems and processes in place while they were there.
No, that's right. And this specific, repetitive motion injury, I mean, it's looming. It is, I mean, this used to be, before, legalization, really, it was mostly trimming was mostly a seasonal job. Most of this job would be go to harvest season in October, work for a month or two, cutting down the plants, trimming the plants. And, the repetitive motions, were known back then. I mean, this was something that the trimmers, I mean, generally had a hard time with. And now that we have these indoor facilities and there's just constant or perpetual harvesting, these trimmers are working 30, 40 hours a week doing, this real, nuanced trimming. And this is dangerous. This is an injury that if you don't have proper ergonomic controls in place, like stretching, job rotations, really workplace design is extremely important as well. If they're not in place, I mean, this hazard is going to, it's going to be significant. But there again, the good news is this is controllable, and we have some great service partners that we work with that can really help design world-class ergonomic processes to really prevent this. And this is something you need to get ahead of, because once these claims start coming in, it's too late, because this is one of those, they're chronic illnesses. This is not something, I mean, it can be acute where there can be a moment where, oh no, like something really went wrong. But really, this is one of those injuries that builds up over time and really isn't known until it gets really bad, where it's like they think it's a soreness, but really what's happening is something like carpal tunnel, or they call it musculoskeletal illnesses. So yeah, protect.
I would also add that a great control or method of control is also educating and empowering your team to be able to identify for their own, knowledge, so they can hold themselves accountable for how they're sitting, if they're hovering, how they're holding, how fast they're walking, what types of shoes they're wearing, but also to be able to, comfortably not call each other out on the job, but look out for one another, so that it's not down to the one person, maybe the owner, operator, or the manager, to be the one who's, making sure that they're regulating their employee safety to really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, early reporting is and that's really one of the most important parts of an ergonomic process. Is if you feel something wrong, you need to say something. And if you see somebody else potentially struggling, and then this is one of the big parts of this, of the worker safety, is that these people are coming largely from the black market. Not much to say, don't know percentage wise how many, but a lot of people are coming, from, this black market industry. They don't feel like they can report anything. They don't know their rights. Every worker has a right to report these injuries without fear of reprisal. And that's really important. So these people, the employees really need to feel safe in coming forward and saying something's wrong. And they need to be empowered. You need to give them the ability to say, hey, if something's off, tell us. And so early reporting of these injuries is extremely important.
Yeah. And I will, before we move on to the fifth and final risk, I will also just on this note, because we did say that the number one risk as it pertains to worker safety really is slips, trips, and falls. So I think a couple controls that, quick and immediate ones are just having a standard for what proper footwear is, with whether you're in a retail or a cultivation, just proper footwear that promotes and promotes safety. Also non-slip shoes. If anyone's working in a cultivation, the process of cleaning up and just all of what goes on in there. definitely need to have the standard of a non-slip shoe.
Yeah, good footwear is really important. You know, the best, it's clogs, like I don't want to say Crocs. Really, it should be closed-toed, chemical
Okay.
resistant. They chef clogs is what they call them. Is really those are the best footwear to have in cultivations, even in extraction facilities. You can wipe off the chemicals, but if you get good slip resistant and chemical resistant footwear, that's going to be your best bet. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, like just like in the restaurant industry, you mentioned chef's clogs. Like, people aren't able to wear their outdoor leisure footwear when at work. And I think that's a great standard to set too within the industry, just as a mitigation.
Yeah, and that helps with the chemical exposure as well. So when
Yeah.
you're working in a cultivation facility, again, you have to assume pesticides are applied everywhere. So if you bring your shoes in from outside and you walk around, and then you can bring that home. So that's another, good reason to have work footwear versus, the shoes that you bring to work.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to the fifth and final, and then after that, we're going to do the open Q&A. So I hope people are starting to think about their questions that they're going to submit to us. It's really important to us that we hear from you and that we get some of your questions answered. But before we do that, Alex, what's the fifth and final risk on this list?
Yeah, this one's really big, and this can be really attributed to any industry, but specifically this one, and it's disgruntled employees. Really, employees as a whole are a huge risk. I mean, and for a lot of ways, but specifically disgruntled employees. And this one can be, this disgruntled employees can really provide a lot of scary things. Right? I mean, they're the one to be the ones that can potentially steal from you, right? Like these are the people that already getting past your security systems. They're coming into the facility. If they're trimming, they can easily, slip something in their glove, or, obviously there's a lot of product and potentially cash around. So that's something that, that I know keeps some operators up at night as well. But, so there's a lot of theft that can potentially happen, but really these are also the employees that for a lot of times we'll actually call enforcement agents. And actually a significant amount of the reasons why enforcement agencies actually show up on site, OSHA, and in Colorado we have the MED, and Marijuana Enforcement Division. The majority of the reason why they're showing up to cannabis facilities is because an employee called them about some issue at the facility. And some are legitimate issues. A lot are erroneous because they're upset with their employers, and a lot of the enforcement agencies are aware. Some of these calls are coming from those employees, but this can cause so much headache, control. And the other thing that that they can do is sabotage your business. That with plants is really easy. That plants can they can die really quick without water. Water systems can be cut off. Other types of pests or fungi, things can be brought into the facility that can cause a lot of real difficulties for the operators. So somebody with some bad intentions that is working from you can really cause some significant damage. So you got to be careful. There's a lot of different ways you can mitigate that. You can control that. Really, it's talent optimization, right? You putting employees in a good team where they can thrive. Having a good culture. Culture is a big statement, but it's really important to have employees feel one that that they belong there, that they're trusted, that they're valued.
Part of something.
Yeah, exactly. And so if they feel kind of out of the loop, you might be causing a situation that you might not even be realizing. So you really want to make them feel like they belong, and with the worker shortage out as well. I mean, I think this is really important to have, again, good culture. There's wellness programs out there that that can really help businesses as well, that that can make them feel that they're getting good benefit and have a healthy happy environment that they can come into.
And I'll also add that we're working in cannabis, so a lot of employees that come on have this expectation that this is going to be like cool and fun and just like fun the whole time. And you know, from their perspective, they have again expectations of what this is going to be like. So when it's not cool and fun, and maybe you know they're being reprimanded or talked to about something, or how they spoke to somebody, or how they handled product, and that doesn't sit well with them, that now gives them ammo to. And your employees are, you know, your internal marketing arm. They are, after they leave the job, they're still telling everybody they know that they work in cannabis and where they work, because they're psyched and it's really awesome and they're proud of that. But if they don't have positive things to say about their experience, they could be, you know, the word of mouth. They could be, you know, spreading negativity about the environment, and that could cause people not to want to shop there, but also future people who are looking to join the industry to not want to work there.
Yeah. PR, yeah, public relations, it can cause a nightmare. It is actually important to try to, you know, make some of those terminations as amicable as possible. I know that's really hard, but it is, like you said, I mean, once they leave the facility, if they, you know, if they have something bad to say about your business, I mean, they'll probably share that on social media, and as far as they can, you know, get their message out. So it's really
And
important.
of course, that's not specific to the cannabis industry, that's any and every industry. But also the world that we live in today is everyone's on social media. And you know, the other point that I'll make, it's not specific to disgruntled employees, all employees, but you know, how people are posting on social media, if they're taking photographs, you know, how they're representing the brand while they're on the job and clocked in, what they're sharing with the public. And those of us who are in the industry know how, you know, how volatile it is, what you say and what you post on social media, and how it's tied to your brand, how that could ultimately hurt you because of how strict, you know, the social media guidelines are for what we can and can't share. So it's also, I think a lot of the disgruntled employees, you know, a control is really starting off right with the employee handbook and a proper training, and really being clear about what you know is and is not allowed on the job. But also, again, with creating a good culture is investing in your employees, checking in with them often, monthly or quarterly, make them feel seen and heard, so that you can also kind of detect if something's not right, if they are harboring some sort of negativity with another employee, or you know, with the job as a whole, just to really stay dialed in, because again, your people can make or break you. And it certainly takes a village to run these businesses and go the distance with them. So you definitely want to make sure that you have the right team.
Yeah.
And I know, Alex, we were going to also kind of highlight here the importance of documenting discipline.
Absolutely. Like I said, yeah, I mean, really, you know, back to the whole, you know, if this, you know, if any issue ends up in court, it's really important to bury them in paperwork, to show them what you did. And so if you can't show them through documentation what you did, in a sense, it didn't happen in their eyes, you know. So it's really important to document the discipline. You know, if you terminate somebody that had a couple prior infractions, but you didn't document those prior infractions, it could be more challenging to defend that termination if they decide to make a lawsuit out of it. So you really need to document, make sure that you have proper, you know, documentation. Is anytime there's, you know, they've done something in subordination or whatever, whatever incident there was, that you have an incident report, and that you're tracking that, you know, and that you're tracking, you know, how, you know, the termination, you know, actually went down, tracking what incident resulted in the termination, all of that, you know. So there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of different forms that people use, but again, documenting it is the most important thing. Not letting an incident go without putting it on paper is really important.
And I'll also just add, that many businesses have an HR team or an HR person that they can look to or have help managing through these situations. But many businesses do not have an HR team that's leading them through the proper ways. And so if you are a business that doesn't have an HR arm, documentation is first and foremost, not only for negative or reprimanding conversations, but if you are investing in and you're documenting positive conversations with your employees, that will also make them feel a certain way. They will appreciate that, and that will further improve their buy-in and their feeling of being an asset and an important part to your team. I will add just to everybody that's on here, before joining the cannabis space, my background is in HR for fast casual restaurants, which share some similarities to the cannabis industry and many non-similarities. But I am a full proponent to documentation constantly. And I know the number one struggle that I had in the past is, documenting individual employees. It takes a lot of time. It takes the forethought, the planning, the writing down, the time to sit down with the employee. It really does take up a lot of time. But it is very much worth the investment, where if you do find yourself in a situation where an ex-employee or a recently terminated employee is bringing you to court, it will just create so much more ease and peace of mind that you know that you did all that you needed to and are prepared to show up with XYZ, proof that you handled everything the right way. Because it will, if not, it will cost you a lot of money and a lot of time, which it's already running around like a chicken with your head cut off to just run these businesses on a daily basis. So you want to make sure that you're taking the time to set yourself up for success in the long run. Awesome. So those were our 5 risks that cannabis businesses are taking that they might not even realize. And we'd love to allow for the next 10 minutes to hear from the audience, to take some questions, and to just create some conversation here. Unfortunately, we can't see you, but we would absolutely love to hear from you in the Q&A or in the chat box. I do see David wrote in here, but asking if there was any discussion in de-escalation of customers, for example, mask mandates not being followed.
Yeah, no, we didn't obviously talk about that yet, but that is an issue. Behavioral intervention. There's a couple things here that you can do to really help. You can have one. Every business should have a workplace violence prevention program, and this basically is there should be at minimum a policy of zero violence or threats, verbal or physical. There should be a zero tolerance for any of that from employees and from customers, right? So that everybody should know that threatening anybody is never okay. But there's also should be training, behavioral intervention, right? So I mean, Jen, you say HR, and from the restaurant industry, I think you're familiar with bad customers and people losing their temper, and you really, as a storefront dealing with retail and outwardly facing dealing with customers, you really need to have policy in place. Really, you should be able to, again, train the employees to try to de-escalate. That should be the first. There shouldn't be an initial confrontation. I know everybody's on edge. This has been a long, hard couple years, and masks have turned to be a huge huge point of contention for a lot of people, and regardless, and it is turned into a political kind of fight. But I think the position businesses should be in is not looking for that fight, is obviously have policies, have the signs up, what policies you have. If it's if it's requiring masks, have those signs up. And if employees or if a customer comes in and they're not wearing their mask, again, don't look for the fight, try to de-escalate, try to calm the situation. And this is ultimately where security comes in, right? If somebody's resisting the company's policies, and chooses not to follow them, and they want to be a problem, that's if you've tried everything to de-escalate, to have masks, have some of those disposable masks on site, just to have them wear it while they're in the facility. And if they reject all of those, that's when security is required. And again, it never has to escalate to violence, and it never really should.
Well, I would also add on the point that you made of training, for this question, and just in general, pertaining to a lot of the things, employee safety, disgruntled employees, training should never end after an employee's 2 weeks. You should be investing in your team and providing them with tools to keep growing, to become better. And maybe not on an individual, but like start your days with like a full team meeting, and go over any new trainings, any new systems and processes, any changes, and really make sure that this conversation, especially because it's so relevant for today, that it's not a one-time conversation about how to manage and deal with customers and patients or employees that are refusing or giving a problem with the mask mandate. It should be a constant conversation. And another thing that I would also add here is role playing. This is something that's very unnatural, and reading it on paper, how to de-escalate, could be very well understood. But when you're in the moment and you're faced with a customer or a patient, and you now have to have this tough conversation, that when you're uncomfortable and you've never spoken the words out of your mouth before, that's when you're likely to derail and maybe say things that wouldn't be approved, or lose control of the conversation. So I would definitely influence role playing with how to have these tough conversations within your team before that you're open for business, so that everyone feels comfortable really stepping up and saying what needs to be said when it does.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great advice.
So do we have any more questions from anybody out there? It could be about anything that we've talked about in the last 45, 50 minutes. It could be a general risk question. It could be just to Alex or I. But we'd really love to utilize these last couple of minutes by hearing from those who are out there with us. We've got Brittany Wong. She asked, what role does your risk assessment have in preventing the risks that you talked about? Great question.
No, that's great advice. All right, great question. So yes, no, what we can do through the NCRPS is really come in and do an assessment of your business, your facility. And we have a lot of different types of assessments. We love to, provide what we call our enterprise-wide risk assessment. That when this is a deep dive. We'll go into, your strategy, all your management, your governance programs, everything that needs to be implemented control-wise before you operate, all of your, your daily operational procedures, and we'll look at, your continuous improvement plan as well for your business. And that, if we do that, we really can analyze, really pretty much all your different types of risks. We've also, if we can come in and do a more specific risk. If that enterprise-wide review is too much, we can isolate what risk do you guys want to focus on. We can, if it's a product safety risk, we can, focus on that. If it's a worker safety, we can focus on that. We also have property and general premise risk, and as well as banking risk. Again, the money laundering side of it all, that can be really helpful for a business to understand, what am I missing? Am I reporting everything that I need to be reporting? Am I controlling, my inventory to the degree where we're preventing inversion and diversion? We can definitely help make sure businesses have best practices. So again, we can come in, we can do a full review and identify all of the risk types that we have and give you a score on all of them, or we can come in a very specific review if you're looking for a specific risk that you want assessed. So we can come in, identify, and the cool thing is once we identify, the issues is that we hand you the resources and standards and procedures to fix them yourself. And if those controls are too difficult for a business, then we will provide them with resources to our service partners. We'll give referrals. We'll give also referrals to our academy and our courses, so businesses know they can educate themselves and know more about the risks that their business has and how to control them, because that's ultimately what it's about, right? It's about knowing what the risk is, and once you know what the risk is, it becomes less scary, and that's what we're here for, right? I help you identify the risks. We want to help you, give you the resources to control them. And, we're here for businesses that are looking for long-term success and how to control and mitigate those risks.
Yeah, I know we're at the turn of the hour here, so we will close up. But I will also say, many people who are driving cannabis businesses today have experience running and establishing a business from the ground up. But most people that we've come in contact with in our time don't have that experience. And, it definitely is amazing because it's the passion for the industry that's driving people here. But most businesses don't make it past the first year, and that's a reality outside of cannabis without the complexity of this industry. So really, this risk assessment will expose you and educate you on underlying risks that you didn't even know were there or to look for, and also just kind of give a checkup on how you're doing, how efficient and effective your systems and processes that you have in place are. And really, we exist to grow individual businesses as well as the industry at large. So in order for the cannabis industry to go the distance for years and years to come and become this legitimate industry that we all hope that it will, it really depends on each business one at a time finding that success, because every fallback or downfall for one business is a step in the wrong direction for all of us as a whole. So it's it's really just providing that support, someone to call, because you're not in this alone, and there are people who have a lot of great experience that they're eager to share for the greater good of all of our success.
Yeah, no,
I do think we got one more question here. Are there any particular risks being seen in hemp cultivation?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. So hemp and marijuana, obviously this from the same plant, cannabis, right? And this is a designation. This is a legal designation, right? So marijuana is cannabis with above 0.3% THC. Hemp is cannabis with below 0.3% THC. Hemp has been legalized through the 2018 Farm Bill. And so hemp is federally legal now. But there are some particular risks. It's the same process. They're the same essential risks, but a particular risk for hemp really is product liability. And the reason being is that they don't have the same testing requirements. Like I said, in marijuana, there's still early stage developing. Well, what tests are, what should be done for, contaminants, and they're still developing those out, and we hope that that they catch up very soon to what the real contaminants are out there. With hemp, all you have to test for is potency, 0.3% THC. That's all there is. There's no contaminant test required. There's no pesticide residuals. There's no, yeast molds, spores, contaminant, general filth contaminants. Different states call it different things, but they're not testing for any of those contaminants, heavy metals, and things like that. So that's where hemp hemp cultivation, in my mind, that their product liability is even greater than in the licensed marijuana industry. So I would even encourage, any hemp cultivators out there to take additional steps, have internal testing, understand, what your contaminant is before you sell it to the market. Just like I said, with the trial lawyers circling for marijuana, they're doing the same thing with hemp, and they'll do the same thing with CBD. And if these people go out there and test these products and they find contaminants in it, hemp, you cultivators, everybody up and down the vertical, from extractors to infusers to everybody, could be liable for product safety issues. So that would be the big one for hemp cultivation.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Welcome.
So we're nearing the end of today's session. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope that you found this to be a valuable use of time. Sharing our screen now so that you can have both Alex and I's contact information. We would love to take this conversation offline and answer questions that pertain specifically to your business and your business model and goals. So please utilize us as a resource. Reach out to us to learn more about NCRMA membership, the benefits of membership, as well as NCRPS, which is, again, the National Cannabis Risk Prevention Services, which Alex has spearheaded, which is the sector where you will get the risk assessment, as well as the continued support from our certified team of risk managers. I also want to invite everybody out there, if you're not already, give us a follow on social media. We've got a LinkedIn page, Instagram, Facebook. So you choose which social media platform is the one that you use most, and definitely give us a follow. We're on a consistent basis sharing resources, learnings, and real-time happenings that are happening across the country to our members and to the industry at large. And it's really one of the most important parts of growing this industry together, is learning from each other's mistakes, learning from each other's learnings, so that we can, give each other the tools, again, to succeed and build a sustainable industry. I've also added into the chat here quick links to access the NCRM Academy, which is our virtual academy. We have 32 hours of risk-specific, cannabis-specific courses that are created by our vetted subject matter experts and contributing educators. Members get a 20% discount, but these courses are open to anybody. And also a part of your NCRPS risk assessment is getting a personalized curriculum based off of your needs, of which courses that for you and members of your team to take, in which order, so that, again, you are equipped with the tools and knowledge necessary to not find yourself in any hot water. Lastly, I also put the link to our recently created LinkedIn group. It's called Mastering Cannabis, Risk versus Reward. And this will be a place where members, non-members, any people from the industry, our team of risk experts will share very valuable information and influence conversations about what's happening there, answer questions. And so it's a place where we can all stay connected and share each other's learnings, and also celebrate each other's successes and wins. So once again, I'd love to thank you all on behalf of myself and Alex, the NCRMA, and our family of brands, NCRPS and Trichome Risk, which again is our insurance sector. We look forward to hearing from you, and hope that you found this time valuable. We'll see you guys next time on our next live webinar, and we wish you all the best. Stay safe out there until next time.
Thanks, everybody.